I want to talk about this 50-year mortgage thing. A lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are talking, bad, bad, bad. I disagree, but I disagree to a point. So let me start with this. There was another report that there's an attempt to create 15-year car loans. I think that is a bad idea. I don't think cars cost enough, and I don't think they should cost enough for you to need to spend 15 years paying it down. Now, part of the reason cars cost as much as they do now is because of the 2009 program that Barack Obama created, the cash for gas guzzlers or whatever. This idea that we need to get the super old cars off the road because they were putting out too many emissions, that we now know has basically destroyed the used car market. That's created a gap of cheap cars. It's done exactly what happened to the used car market in the UK in the early 2000s. So this entire thing has basically been a byproduct of terrible Obama era decisions. But let's talk about this 50-year mortgage thing, okay? The way mortgages are now, I'm going to use the 2000, or actually I'm going to use 1500. So normally when I'm talking to a buyer, I describe their payment as $2,000. So let's say your monthly payment is $2,000. You're going to $1,500 of that the lender keeps, and then $500 goes into an escrow account. That $500 is supposed to pay your property tax and your homeowner's insurance. But that $1,500 is made up of your principal and your interest. But for the first about 15 years, the interest is between, let's say, 95% on that first payment. If that first payment is $1,500, the interest in that payment is probably about $1,460. So that's why I tell every buyer, and anyone that buys property knows, you try to pay extra principal every month. If you have a $1,500 or $1,200 mortgage payment, if you pay another $100 every month, that could be 6 years, 7 years off your mortgage. So with these 50-year mortgages, first off, yes, you're already going to start at an advantage because you're going to have a lower payment. Okay, that's a good thing. Having a lower payment is good. If you have more money, more freed up money to mess with, then that's a net good. Now, if you decide to take that 50-year mortgage and do nothing, and no extra payments, no nothing, to put nothing in and just live on 50-year mortgage, I think you're kind of an idiot. You got an opportunity here to pay off that loan very quickly, because if they keep the standard amortization schedule, which is what the 7 or 8 pages that you get in your loan package that shows every single payment of those 360 payments, if you keep that normal pay schedule, then yeah, it's going to take you 50 years. But the other thing we have to remember is a lot of people already have had like 60 or 70-year mortgages, because all they do is refinance. They'll sit there and they'll take they'll take a 30-year mortgage out, and then 10 years in, there's a better rate, so they refinance again. Well, that adds another, if you've spent 10 years making payments, that puts another 10 years on the back end there. So now we have a 40-year mortgage. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of semantics, and yeah, it kind of, it makes your payment lower and all that stuff. But this kind of stuff still happens. If you're smart, you could also take this 50-year mortgage, take the lower payment. Now, I suspect that you might end up having a higher interest rate. I'm not sure yet. They haven't really talked about it, how they're going to do that. But if you take a 15-year mortgage, you get a low interest rate. If you take a 20-year mortgage, you get one that's higher than a 30-year mortgage, which makes no sense to me. And if you take a 30-year mortgage, you get the average rate. And right now, I think it's about 6.1. But you can always buy down. But the thing that is kind of annoying me is you have just a bunch of people saying, no, bad idea. And I think that's wrong. I think most of these ideas are good. I even think a 15-year car loan could be a good idea for some people. Okay. But you need to be aggressive. If you're going to take out these loans for extra long times, you need to be actually aggressive and pay that stuff down early. Okay. If you end up just taking the minimum every single month, then you're going to be duty bound to some bank for 50, 60 years. And nobody wants that. You need to live at a fuck you level of money. And in order to get to that fuck you level of money, you need to be able to pay off your debt quickly. If you have to eat ramen for a year and end up being debt free, then do it. But I think completely demonizing these ideas is a bad idea. I think a 50-year mortgage could work for a lot of people. You lower that barrier of entry, you let a bunch of people buy homes, and then get those people to be aggressive in paying that debt down. If let's say instead of that $2,000 number, maybe you have a $1,700 payment. Okay, well, of that $1,700, let's say it's $300 for escrow and property tax, will lose you a $1,400 mortgage, which is principal and interest. Well, for that first 4 or 5 years, the amount of principal you'll pay off is probably between about 10 to 35% of those payments. Throw some extra principal money in there, and you eliminate probably, like, if you were aggressive and paid another $300 a month towards principal, you could probably turn that loan into, I'm doing the math off the top of my head, you could probably turn that loan into a 32-year mortgage easily. So all that means is later you just throw more money in. You just be aggressive. And that's where I think most people who are saying this isn't a good idea, I think their concern is that people will just kind of be lazy and just be like, well, I'll just take the longer payments and a lower payment, which sounds good today. But in 20 years, you're going to be really pissed off when you have another 30 years to pay. So I understand where both sides are coming from, but I think this is a net positive for people today. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be a good thing in 20 years. But I think today, this is a chance to get a lot of people into homeownership, start building up that equity. And the other thing that I like is that they're talking about allowing people to assume interest rates. So if someone bought a house in 2021 when the interest rate was 2.3%, then if, like, let's say John bought that house. Well, if John has, $150,000 left on his mortgage, he's probably got, let's say, $70,000 worth of equity. So let John go sell the house to James. Let James assume the mortgage and the mortgage rate, continue to pay off that 150 at the same rate, and let John go take his 70K in equity and go buy another house. That's what should happen. And honestly, that should happen before this 50-year mortgage. If that happens, a lot of good gets fixed. But I do think this is a decent idea. And I await everyone in the comments telling me I'm wrong, please, because I could be. Look, hindsight's 2020. We could look back on this 20 years and go, wow, this is the worst idea ever. But right now, I don't think it's a bad idea. Guys, don't forget to like and comment. Please subscribe. I want to hear what y'all have to say. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.